I'm sorry for your loss. That's traditionally what one says to a mourner. But today, we are all mourners, because Bruce was such a presence in all of our lives. It's hard to imagine the world without him in it, because the world was so enriched by his passion, his energy, his optimism, and his love. What would Los Angeles be without all the work that he did with Coro, the Children's Museum, Discovery Cube LA, the MLK Community Health Foundation, the California Community Foundation? It's impossible to imagine. And think of how he cherished and gave back to Wesleyan, and also to the Hebrew Union College, because Bruce so loved rabbis. And the difference that he made in local and national community through the political leaders that he mentored and supported, from Mayor Bradley to senators and presidents. None of that can be measured. And what would Temple Emanuel be without all that he did for this temple? He fought for this temple. He chaired the search that led to my becoming the senior rabbi here at a time when many people didn't think the synagogue or the world was ready for women senior rabbis. He touched our community in private and in public ways, from his coaching of B'nai Mitzvah students to his cheerleading of clergy. He was a cheerleader of clergy. He celebrated so many important moments of his life here, including the wonderful 50th anniversary of Tony and his extraordinary marriage. So many are here today in the Corwin Family Sanctuary, with light illuminating all the memories we each have of Bruce. Light that pushes back the darkness of our loss. So many people are here, and so many more are watching virtually. Today, we all walk in the shadow of the valley of death. But Bruce's life reminds us that the only way there can be a shadow is if there is light behind it. Bruce was the source of that light, believing even in the darkest times that the arc of the universe bends towards justice, and then bending that arc himself with the work that he did in the world. Bruce died just as the new month of Kislev began. Kislev, the darkest month. And in the darkness, we make light, one candle at a time. Bruce was the shamash, the connector candle that lights the other candles, the energy that kindles the vision of a world where people are at the center, where joy is possible, a world that is built from love. Each one of us whose life Bruce touched is one of those candles. The brilliance of the menorah that he created with his life is his legacy. Our service this afternoon includes short remarks from some of those candles, people whom he mentored and worked with over the years in the projects that mattered to him, people who became his close friends. And then we'll hear from some members of his family. Our first speaker is Senator Alex Padilla.
Afternoon. It's going to be tough for all of us as we begin by just remembering one of the many, many great memories with Bruce, because this is a celebration of a tremendous, tremendous man. I want to thank you and the entire family for the honor of sharing a few thoughts and memories of the great man that you all were blessed to call husband, father, papa, and that I was blessed to call a friend. Bruce Corwin was kind, was generous, compassionate, wise, and always, always an optimist. I first met Bruce in 1994 when I was in the Coro Fellows program. Not the only one that can say that, but I remember being invited over to the Metropolitan Theaters Corporation office to visit one of my fellow fellows. And yes, that's how we refer to each other. Went to go visit a friend because he was raving about this incredible sports memorabilia collection in the office. And as wonderful as that collection was, I know many of you had a chance to just glimpse a piece of it. I met Bruce, and my life would never be the same. Over the years, we bonded in numerous talks about family, of course, community, leadership, as well as movies, sports, especially baseball, and just a little bit of politics, just a little bit. Now, I am proud and honored to have benefited from the Bruce Corwin political treatment. What do I mean by that? For a number of my colleagues in public service, we can assure you that when Bruce believed in you, he was all in. No questions asked. And he'd do more for you through his ideas and working his network than you ever could imagine or appreciate. Bruce supported me in every single one of my campaigns. He was with me in City Hall back in 1999 during my first campaign for City Council. We were flanked by Mayor Reardon on one side and Miguel Contreras from the County Federation of Labor on the other. And so, yes, you can say he was with me since even before day one. Till most recently, when I was named California's newest United States Senator, Bruce served as my initial treasurer of my campaign. But our friendship was more than just about politics. Did I mention movies? I want to thank Bruce for allowing me to have a staff meeting of my city council team once upon a time at the metropolitan offices, borrowed a conference room for a few hours, and the meeting ended just coincidentally with a whole lot of pasta and a screening of The Godfather in the theater. baseball, Dodgers. Need I say more? But how do you explain part-time, part ownership of other major league teams, major and minor? It was the love of baseball, and that I could respect. No disrespect to the Dodgers. Community. Bruce had a big hand, this has been mentioned, in countless civic initiatives. And I was lucky to have Bruce as a partner, a long-time partner, an invaluable partner in fulfilling one of my passion projects. The idea that I had back in 2000 of a state-of-the-art children's museum for the children of Los Angeles. And let's locate it in the San Fernando Valley. Bruce was my first call when I had the idea, me not knowing then just how much he was involved with the Children's Museum of Los Angeles once upon a time. A call to Bruce led to conversations with Doug Ring and Tim McCallion and others. And after a 14-year journey, with Bruce helping turn an idea into a cause, we cut the ribbon on the Discovery Cube Los Angeles. And in typical Bruce fashion, the ribbon cutting wasn't the end of it, To ensure its success, we needed to commit to serving on the board and actively serving on the board. And so we did. We all did. But above all, I remain in incredible admiration of the love that he and Tony shared, and that all generations of the Corwins shared. Tony, your love with Bruce reminds me so much of my own parents. Angela and I remember fondly your 50th wedding anniversary celebration. It was just a couple of months before my own parents celebrated their 50th. So how do we pay tribute to Bruce? I think Tony gave us the best suggestion I can imagine. Imagine how happy Bruce would be if we each committed to just one more act of kindness this weekend. I got a better one. Not just one more. How about one more each and every day? Each and every day. I can assure you the world would be a better place. I can assure you the United States Senate would be a much better place. Tony, on behalf of Angela and I and so many throughout the city, throughout the state, throughout the nation, I want to thank you and the entire family for sharing Bruce with us. And Bruce, rest in peace, mi amigo. We love you.
Wendy Gruhl.
Like all of you, I am devastated by the loss of our friend, our mentor, our confidant, and our mensch, Bruce Corwin. When I learned that he had passed away on Thursday, I physically felt the ground shift beneath me. The world was now different, permanently and profoundly so. One might say that this shift was akin to an earthquake, but that would not be an apt descriptor of Bruce Corwin, because earthquakes are scary and destructive. Bruce was the exact opposite. He was kind, he was supportive. Far from being destructive, he was a builder and a creator of so many things. Countless friendships, innumerable relationships among those he thought should know each other but didn't. Community, institutions, and an unquenchable love for his family. Now, I first met Bruce when I was an impressionable young staffer for Mayor Tom Bradley. And here was this larger-than-life civic leader who actually owned movie theaters. Okay, that was a big deal. He moved effortlessly between the worlds of politics and entertainment and was brilliant, yet humble. As a recovering politician, I remember that he always took my calls, even when he knew I needed something, or yes, even when he knew I was going to ask for a contribution. I recently found this when Bruce wrote to me when I was running that first time, when he contributed, and he said, "Wendy, move to the center, you will win." He was right. Although I felt like I was special, I know that is how Bruce treated everyone who called him for advice and counsel. And yes, even for that contribution. His office is adorned with photos, memorabilia, framed notes, and there's a story behind each and every one of them, reflective of treasured moments, friendships. He had admirers all across the country, presidents, senators, baseball players, movie stars. It was astonishing to see who Bruce knew and who loved him. Although Bruce and I were in contact over the years regularly, we worked closely, as mentioned earlier, in connection with the opening of the Discovery Cube LA, a new children's science museum in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. All of us who knew Bruce could attest to his never give up, we can do this attitude. It was infectious. I remember when we were walking through the Cube with our president and leader, Joe Adams, as exhibits were being installed for the first time. It had been a very long journey. And in fact, I took a picture of Bruce looking at those exhibits because he was so excited that his dream had finally come true. Now, I am not sure how many of you got that late night, or mostly after midnight, emails that he sent with an idea he had for a potential donor, an exhibit, or just a note to let him know that he was thinking of you or to encourage you with your project. So how many of you got those one morning, oh yes, many of you, emails from Bruce Corwin? He also sent me copies of the business journal where he circled people I should call to support the Discovery Cube. Now, your unwavering support, Tony and Bruce, we were able to honor them at the Discovery Cube. And as I recall, Tony, Bruce would put up his hand so much for the raise the paddle that you would look at me and say, he needs to put his hand down and grab his arm, because he was always giving to those projects that he felt near and dear to his heart. And of those, there were many, because Bruce was all in. In addition to the Cube, his love, of course, of Coro was steadfast. It didn't matter that I was a Coro reject. I still loved him anyways. He did what it takes to revitalize, re-energize, and reinvigorate organizations. And as mentioned, he wasn't just on the board for a few years. It was a lifetime commitment. That is evident with the Cube, Coro, and MLK Hospital, and many others, including so many Jewish organizations, and of course, including Temple Manuel. He loved connecting those dots, doing good, and good with good people to support their efforts. He was that ultimate connector. But when we talk about Bruce, and my husband and I often did, it actually, and for many of us, it actually was Bruce and Tony. You didn't just say Bruce. It was Bruce and Tony. Two peas in a pod, life partners, partners in crime, an example of what more than 50 years of a strong and loving marriage looks like. Tony, you were his queen, his princess, his assistant, and his confidant. There are so many ways to honor Bruce and celebrate Bruce, but most of all, I want each of us to take a moment and close our eyes. Picture Bruce with that amazing smile, sometimes devilish, and his excitement in his eyes, and to channel his love of life. His was a life well lived, and one that will live on in all of the lives he touched. Yes, with Bruce's passing, the ground has shifted, but the foundation isn't weakened. It is stronger for the example that Bruce gave to all of us. It is permanent, it is profound, and we were blessed to have had him. That Bruce Corwin touched my life was more than I could have ever imagined or hoped for. We love you, Bruce.
Judy Fenton.
Will Rogers once said that he never met a man that he didn't like. I never met a man who didn't like Bruce Corwin. When I first met Bruce Corwin, I was at LA High School. I was just coming in as a 10th grader, and Bruce was a senior. I met him through Jerry Phillips, who I knew through our parents, and both Jerry and Bruce were oogling over the incoming female students. Jerry walked over to introduce Bruce to me, and Bruce had the biggest smile and said, "Hi, if you need anything ever at LA High School, just look me up." He was so kind and so welcoming. I knew that I had met a very special person named Bruce Corwin. Bruce graduated from LA High School and left for Wesleyan. And of course, I never thought that we would ever meet again. But as faith would have it later, and I mean later, I got a phone call from somebody who said, "Hi, this is Bruce Corwin. And are you the lady that's running the slow pitch in Beverly Hills?" And I said, "Yes." And I told him my name. And I asked him if he remembered me from LA High School. Of course I do, because I knew that Bruce, with kindness and probably a big smile, didn't have a clue who I was, but he was just being Bruce Corwin. He wanted to enroll his son in slow pitch, and of course, I really wanted to get to know him better, so I went through his child to get to know Bruce better. Little League started the friendship of a lifetime for the Fentons and the Corwins. To look back at some of the best Fenton-Corwin moments would have to start with the Palm Springs Angels. Bruce wanted to buy this major league farm club and wanted investors. I don't think I ever saw more people jump at the chance to invest. It was quite a group. One day in Palm Springs, when we were all there to watch this pathetic team, they really did well. And we were shocked. More shocked than us was Bruce. So he decided, I can't even tell this without laughing, he decided to approach the manager, Tom Kochman, with a wonderful offer. He wanted to fly the team to the next location so they wouldn't have to take their rickety old bus. I don't want to exactly tell you the words he used for Bruce, but the thing was, "Don't let the door hit you on your way out." Bruce looked so dejected, and he came back with this pathetic look on his face. He wanted to reward his team for a great game, because that was Bruce Corwin. Another pet project was Bruce and Jerry, who were on the Los Angeles High School Foundation Board. Jerry took Bruce to an early football game one day because the football field had no lights. Another goal for Bruce. He took it to the highest level. I remember getting the phone call about the football team. I said, "What are you doing now?" And he said, "Just $100, that would do it, and I'll hang up." "Okay, $100, you got it, but where am I giving it to?" "To your alma mater, LA High School, so we can put lights on." And don't you think within 2 weeks we had lights on the football field, because that was Bruce Corwin. Wesleyan University, as most of you know, played a big part in his life, and later in our lives too. Bruce loved his alma mater and supported all their endeavors and raised money and raised awareness. They rewarded Bruce by naming the stadium at Andrus Field, the Corwin Stadium, as it stands today. And I understand from my granddaughter who's there that they have now put flowers around the post there. He even became the Southern California recruiter for Wesleyan, and he sent many recommendations on many kids' behalf. His goddaughter, my granddaughter, Kelly, is in her junior year and making Bruce really proud. But the proudest moment of all is when his granddaughter, Teva, came walking into his house with the cap on, and she hadn't told him that she had made that decision to go to Wesleyan. And if any of you were lucky enough to see that video, I still cry at Teva walking in, and he had the look on his face because nobody told him, because he didn't want to put the pressure on. No, he wouldn't put the pressure on, and he was so proud of you, and he was so happy, Teva, that you were there. He also liked to boast that the Wesleyan now had a Corwin, a Fenton, and a Reams. And the Reams was also a very close family friend. That made him so happy. I could go on, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention his best friend, Frank. He also called him Frankie. The most significant story of all that I still have in my heart is the love that they had for each other. When Frank got sick, it was Bruce. He was there with him every week for almost 5 years, and with him at the end, he would come over once or twice a week, and he would sit with him or play catch. Bruce was so amazed that Frank could catch the ball, but when thrown, but he couldn't return it. And Bruce decided that was going to make him his lot in life, to teach Frank to throw the ball. But it just wasn't happening. And Bruce decided playing catch just one way would be okay, because he had the patience of a saint. When Frank couldn't speak anymore, he showed his happiness through a smile every time Bruce walked into our door. Today, if there were any blessings at all, I know that those two friends are back together. I will close with a statement that somebody else wrote, which is sitting here in the audience today, that is worthy of repeating. Today, the world has truly lost the most loving, generous, kind human being on the planet. But the blessing of his love for life, for his family and friends, for every movie he ever saw, for every team he ever supported, will live in our hearts forever. Bruce left the largest footprints of all, and I doubt there's anyone, anywhere, that could come close to filling them. Bruce, you were everything to everyone. Bruce, you were everything to everyone you ever encountered in your 81 years. When people always say to you and your family, "Oh, they're so sorry for your loss," they have no idea what a loss it was, and it still is. You will always hold a special place in my heart. We will always remember your smile, your voice, and all the times that you brought us together for another Corwin cause. Now, go find Frank and throw that ball. Thank you.
Jerry Phillips.
Bruce was my best friend. I was Bruce's best friend. I suspect there are dozens of people in this room who believe that and will ever and forever believe it. He made us feel that way.
He made us his best friend because he said we were. He had that smile, that handshake, the clapping, 3, 4 claps whenever we said something he liked. His hugs, he was concerned about us, not him. Bruce, don't go. Don't leave us. We need you too much. We need your laughter, your happiness. You have to stay. We've got a game tomorrow, and you're pitching. We'll be the California Angels. We'll be the Butte Copper Kings. We'll be the Casper Rockies. We'll be the San Diego Padres. You're pitching. Sherman, you're at third. Danny, shortstop. You'll be there. I'll play second. Garvey's at first, right? The outfield, Frank will be out there. Gary, Steve, Myron, Gil. Tom Saliba, if you're here, if you don't mind, catch, will you? He may need you to close the game for him. All right. Kathy needs this. Tony doesn't. Bruce would love it. I'll tell 2 Bruce stories. That's it, just 2. One of them will be Kathy's favorite, I'm sure. One's apocryphal, the other is absolutely true. It is. It's me. It's true. The first one, you all know that Bruce was big in politics, charitably. A ladies' man, he wasn't. He enjoyed life. That was what was important to him. We graduated LA High. He went off to Wesleyan. A year later, he's back, and he calls me, and he said, let's go out, and let's double. Great, I'll get Marilyn to fix you up. Oh, no, I have my little black book. Bruce had a little black book. I said, wonderful. He tells me that he leafed through the book. There's Barbara. He called Barbara. Hi, is Barbara there? And the woman on the other end, I'm sorry, we don't know anybody Barbara at this number. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hangs up, looks through. Oh, there's Roberta. Rings. It's a disconnected number. Goes through again. Gloria, perfect. Calls Gloria. Hi, is Gloria there? Well, she's living in Europe now. Oh. Keeps looking. Finds Barbara. Did I say Barbara before? Doesn't matter. Finds Helen. How's that? Hi, is Helen there? Oh, this is Helen speaking. Oh, wonderful. This is Bruce Corwin. Bruce, I haven't talked to you in so long. How are you? Fine. I'm so glad to get a hold of you, Barbara, or Helen, or whatever her name is. And he said, oh, what are you doing Saturday night? And she said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm getting married Saturday. So Bruce, in typical Bruce, said, oh, yeah? Oh, congratulations. What are you doing Friday night? That was Bruce. This is the absolute true story about us as seniors at LA High. Believe me, it's true. Bruce, we were all in his shadow, Judy and Susie and Eileen, and Tom and Bob. We were just, he owned that school. And he was the student body president. And we were coming up upon our football season, and we had been moved out of the Western League because we were, bottom line, too good for Fairfax and Hammy and Uni. We were moved into the Southern League. But we were playing Fairfax in the first time since we had been moved 3 years before in a preseason game. Bruce said, we've got to do something that will make this Oh, fine, Bruce, whatever you want. You're in charge here. You own the place. He said, let's have a mascot. What kind of a mascot? This is a true story. What kind of a mascot? He said, well, SC has a horse that they run around the track at the Coliseum at halftime of their games. Let's get a horse. Sure, Bruce. Apparently, he goes to one of the broken down Burbank studios and he rents this sort of white horse. And he finds a guy in our class who knows how to ride horses. And he takes the guy to Western costume and gets him a Roman costume with a helmet and whole thing, because we were the LA High Romans. And if any of you know this, on the east side of the track and football field were our stands where we sat. It's different today. On the west side was the visiting team. And next to the stands on the visiting team was the teacher parking lot. So we had it all set up for halftime. He would have the horse brought to the teacher's parking lot. The guy in the uniform and the gorgeous and the Romans would meet him there. And I had a signal, and I would call out the signal, and the horse would come running around, and it would be the greatest thing since sliced bread. We found the name for the horse. We did a contest among the students. The only one that could have been used that the Board of Education would have approved was Spirit. So at halftime, we were killing him. I think it was 38-0. We were beating up on Fairfax. Sorry, folks, if you went to Fairfax. I don't care. 38-0. And now I'm on the mic down on the field because I was the cheerleader in his shadow. And I said, and here's the signal, and I said, and here, after I do a bunch of stuff, here comes Spirit. Nothing. The gate doesn't open. Nothing. I said, oh, he didn't hear me. So a little louder this time. Here comes Spirit. Nothing. It's a true story. Finally, at the top of my lungs, I scream, here comes Spirit. Finally, the gate opens and out runs Bruce. It's true. He's running. The Fairfax people are laughing. The horse finally comes out. Bruce ended up beating the horse by 2 furlongs when he got in front of us. The end of this story, again, it's a true story. Other high schools in the city wanted to do what we did. So the first one to do it was the San Fernando High School in the Valley. Problem was their nickname was the San Fernando Tigers. They brought out a cage with a little tiger cub, and one of their song girls got a little close to the tiger cub, and he took a bite out of her. Anyway, to this day, true, that experience with that horse, as gray as it was, is the only time in the history of high schools in the city of Los Angeles that has had a live, thank you, mascot. Get their names, mascot. That's a true story. Bruce, don't leave us. Don't go away, Bruce. We need you. We will miss you so. We all love you so. Thank you.
On Friday, I received an inquiry from a newspaper asking about Bruce as a stalwart of our community. It was the only appropriate description because, as Rabbi Geller mentioned, Temple Emanuel exists because of Bruce. Yet for all of his dedication and commitment to the Jewish community at Emanuel and beyond, I don't think that you would say that Bruce is a particularly religious man. His love was the love of building community, and he was so good at it, at the way that he showed care for all of the individuals in it, driven by a sense that we should take care of each other. So perhaps it isn't surprising that his favorite prayer was Debbie Friedman's Misha Berach, a prayer for healing each other, a prayer to help us make our lives a blessing for each other, a prayer made even more beautiful every time his grandchildren are the ones to sing it. So we offer Misha Berach now in honor of Bruce, in hope of our own healing through this grief, in hope of healing each other. So Dorit and Hannah, if you two would please join us, Cantor Klieger, Cantor Weiss, and Rabbi Aaron for this blessing.
As we continue, I'd like to invite Robin Kramer to come say a few words.
As is now painfully evident, Bruce Corwin exemplifies what every good human wants to be when he or she grows up. I'm going to share a little Coro secret with you for how to navigate this. It wasn't Yoda who first said, "Do not ask why." It was Coro. We start with how. And so I start. How did Bruce Corwin balance love of family, love of friends, alma maters, dogs, community, and country? For Bruce, it was a giant mashup. Our beautiful 3 sons and our growing family of wonderful women and dogs also have been caught up in this gorgeous net that Tony and Bruce knitted, they and their family. There is no way for us to express our gratitude and our love except to send it back and pay it forward. Second, how? How was it that Bruce Corwin happened to be my very first boss in life? When he was elected to chair the Democratic Party here, just after Jimmy Carter, a long time ago, was elected. This I do not know. But what I do know is that experience working with Bruce then, and in the 45 years since, has created a leadership playbook that puts people first, one from which we all can draw. How could it be that Bruce Corwin, the kindest, gentlest person we have ever known, could be such an unrelenting optimist about the world of rough and tumble of politics, and his fervent belief that politics could make a change for people's life for the good? Well, here's a story which has the virtue of being true. When I started in City Hall a long time ago, I was working for a new council member who had already picked a fight with the mayor, Tom Bradley. It was over the financing of the 1984 Olympics, and I was 26 years old. At a first meeting, I found myself alone with Tom Bradley. Formidable, very tall. And after all, he was the mayor. And he was on the opposite side of this big city issue. I was extremely nervous. I went over to greet him. "Oh, I know who you are," he said. "Uh-oh. Bruce Corwin has already told me all about you. Welcome to City Hall, Robin. We're going to do great things together." This is the same Bruce Corwin, the same sly, cunning Bruce Corwin, who as a young commissioner led the fight early on, all those years ago, to desegregate the LA Fire Department. This was the same Bruce who midwifed the birth of the Martin Luther King Hospital we've heard about in Watts, which lacked a movie theater and health and access to so much more. For these and many other Bruceisms, we learn and hold dear: do not mistake kindness for weakness, that relationships matter because people do, that credit is not yours to claim. Do not sit idly by, and don't ever give up. Then this question: how did Bruce turn one of the 2 most famous Jewish proverbs inside out? Not the love your neighbor as yourself one, but that other one: 2 Jews, 3 opinions. For you already have heard and know that Bruce was a devoted member and leader of this beautiful place of Temple Emanuel, where we gather, but also of Temple Israel of Hollywood. 1 Jew embracing 2 shuls. I am telling you, as a former Temple president, this is an unprecedented feat of servant leadership and faith, and especially so amidst so many opinions. So for me, the biggest question: just how did Bruce do all this? I've concluded Bruce was the Secretary of State for Justice, for kindness, for community progress. We have heard and we know Bruce was the guy who stepped up over and over again and then over to lift up, to lift up, to lead with such integrity, with dignity and class, to mend, to rescue, to embrace. Bruce's big heart and his giant Rolodexes opened thousands of doors, connecting people to opportunity and need and opportunity to people. Like all of you, I've cried me a river for our family and our world, are left so parched by his passing. And yet I know Bruce Corwin, my beloved mentor and friend, would ask us to turn rivers of tears into oceans of kindness, lapping our shore with waves of welcome, waves of caring and justice and love. May his memory be a blessing.
I'd like to now invite Richie Lichtenstein to come up.
Jerry, I don't mind giving some of my time to the good senator, but you sucked up a lot of air, man. It was August 1975 when Melanie and I arrived in Los Angeles to start my Coro year, sans any family in Los Angeles. Familiar refrain we've all heard today, we'll continue to hear, is what a very big Corwin family we all are. As Bruce would say, family's not an important thing, it's everything. How lucky and grateful, Tony, we are to be included. Thank you. I first remember meeting Bruce at a Coro board meeting. The fellows were asked to introduce themselves to the board, and in turn, the board members asked each of us some provocative question about how we were going to do good in the world and make an impact on our community. Bruce, of course, chose to go in a different direction and decided to ask me, "So, you a Yankee or Mets fan?" And there it began, mentor, mentee, advisor, confidant, friends for life. Back in those days, I actually had some tennis skills. Yes, Peter, I had some tennis skills. So Bruce invited me to be his partner in a regular Saturday game. As it turns out, at the home of our next ambassador to Norway. Okay, Mark for now. When neither of us were able to rule the court any longer, we took partnering to new levels, supporting elected officials from redder than red states, to live auction partners at charity events, many of which Melanie and I never attended, but Tony would always call us when she got home to say what we had won. I have too many baseball and horse racing stories for my allotted time today, but we had fun as partners, BC. I did wonder sometimes, though, what a bunch of Jewish guys from West LA were doing dragging out a tarp on a rainy opening day in Butte, Montana. And despite our best efforts in a bunch of Kentucky governor races, we never made it to the Derby together. It was always hard to say no to Bruce, especially when he called and said, "So partner, what do you think?" I did recently put my foot down earlier this year, however, when Bruce wanted us to invest in a prize fighter, but not before I acquiesced to his, "Hey partner, let's at least make a few phone calls and investigate." It was hard to be just be Bruce's friend without being fully incorporated into this beautiful Corwin mishpacha. From bar mitzvahs to weddings, from births to illness, all of us got to share as one big family. And how lucky Melanie and I were to have recently celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary in the Corwin home. But I will miss the private chats Bruce and I had on the phone and our car rides to one event or another. They were deep and personal moments. We laughed, we cried, and of course kvetched, and then we just went back to politics. It was just cherished time between two aging Altacacas. But Melly and I will always have all of the Corwin clan. Partner, to steal a thought from my son, I sure wish we were back in the winner's circle one last time. I love you, Brucey.
Before family members come to speak, we're going to sing another song. But before we do, I just wanted to show this guitar. So 21 years ago, when Bruce turned 60, which is the age I turned the day before he passed away, we went together to the mikveh up at the American Jewish University. And we spent the morning there with him dunking in the mikveh and talking about his future, which really at the time we didn't know, but was going to be you 5 grandchildren that he would cherish over those next 21 years. And so happy that we could celebrate Emmett's bar mitzvah this past year. So we went to lunch. I think Tony got angry at us that we went to a lunch that gave him heartburners. Oh, he drank, that's what it was. And about a week later, he comes to take me to lunch to thank me. And instead of going to a restaurant, we go to this guitar store and we walk in, he says, "Pick a guitar." Crazy? You know, there's like a $25,000 guitar over there. No, that's not what this one is. But we went to this little tiny room and I sat there and played guitars with him, and we decided on this one, which the name of this guitar, of course, is Bruce. And it's going out of tune a little bit because I felt it needed to be strung up new for this afternoon, so pardon the out of tuneness. But the ringing that comes from this guitar is Bruce. And those 21 years after that day were miraculous and wonderful. And we shared so many incredible moments through the music that has been made on this guitar. So one last song for Bruce. There's a poem that we read every year on High Holy Days, and it starts, "Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage." Bruce's life, it was filled with so many journeys. Talking about some of those journeys already, and the family in a moment is going to talk about a lot more. And what becomes clear is that through our own memories of Bruce, that for him the journey truly was the thing that made life meaningful. His journey, your journey, and when I say your, I'm talking about all 500-600 people that are in this room right now. Your journeys were as important to him as his. I felt it in my journey as well, that they've all been influenced by this one-of-a-kind man. So we're going to sing a song of journeys. How we can't predict exactly where we will be or where we will go, but wherever it is, there are those like Bruce who can bring us blessing. Indeed, make our own lives a blessing. And as he lived his life and his journeys, bringing that blessing to us, it enters inside of us. And through him, our lives have been truly blessed. So we sing Lechilach. Like Bruce, this is a little bit of a delicate guitar, little worn.
To a land that I will show you.
Lech lecha to a place you do not know.
Lechi lach, on your journey I will bless you.
And you shall be a blessing.
You shall be a blessing.
And you shall be a blessing. Lechi lach, and I shall make your name great.
Lech lecha, and all shall praise your name.
Lechi lach, to the place that I will show you.
Lesimchat chayim.
Lesimchat chayim. Lesimchat chayim. Lechi lach, and you shall be a blessing.
Join us.
And you shall be a blessing. And you shall be a blessing. Lechi lach.
All that we've done so far is really a warm-up to hear from the people that touched him the most and that he touched the most, and that's his family. So now we're going to hear 5 extremely brief, well, maybe not so much, but that doesn't matter. We're going to hear from Hannah and Teva and Dorrit, and finally, Danny and David.
So I'm Hannah. I'm David's youngest daughter. And last year, I was fortunate enough to live with Noni and Papa for upwards of 4 months. Although I've lived less than 10 minutes away from them for my whole life, getting to spend every day with them was so much more than I could have ever asked for. When I would reach my halfway break through the school day, I'd stumble out to the patio, and Amy and Jasper would join me at some point, and then Noni and Papa, to take in the sun and to start their day. And each night, as Noni began to clean up after dinner, Papa would mouth to me across the table, "Cookies." And he'd crack a mischievous smile as I snuck him that night's treat, while Noni wasn't watching. Each night was something new and was filled with hours of Papa's stories that I'd never heard of before. The stories were endless. He told me about finding Doris Day's lost dog, and traveling to Beanie Baby shows around the U.S. to ensure that Noni had every last one. Just like Papa himself, his memories were remarkable and unforgettable. Within those 4 months, there were surely days when he was sick or hurt, although he never liked to admit it. But whenever I entered the room, he had the wildest grin on his face, as if he could somehow convince me to believe that he was feeling all right. Through all he endured in his 81 years, there was never room for pity or weakness. He'd beg us all to break him out of Cedars-Sinai or to convince Noni that he was perfectly fine to go to next week's Dodgers game. Every time I told someone that I was staying with them, they would tell me how lucky I was to have this time with him. But I never imagined that those would be the last few months we had together. I will remember Papa for all the love and positivity that he brought into this world and into every one of our lives. A thought I'm sure is shared by many. Every day that he was alive, he aimed to make the world a little better and a little brighter in some way or another. He was not only my biggest fan, but each and every one of ours. In his eyes, there was no task too big or a journey too long. He has taught me so much about the importance of family, community, passion, and dedication. And as Noni will attest, he had a special way of making people feel so loved. My family and I share Papa with so many people, and I feel super lucky to have gotten to call him my grandfather. To know Bruce was to love him, and there's an unexplainable bond between the 10 of us that was built around our shared adoration of him, which can never be broken. Thank you, Papa, for all that you've done for us, for LA, for California, and for the Jewish community. Your life stands as an example for all the good that the world possesses and can create. I love you and will think of you always.
Good afternoon. It's so lovely to see all of you here, and it's really powerful to know how many people Papa made such a big impact on, and vice versa. My name's Teva. I'm Danny's daughter, and I'm the one who went to Wesleyan. Today, there's so many things I could say, so many ways in which Papa shaped who I am, my passion for politics, the Padres, and people. I could go on. Yet today, I'm going to tell you a bit about my college application process. Exactly what you want to hear, right? During my college application process last year, there had to be a few interventions to stop the continuous flow of Wesleyan-related emails I was receiving from Papa. Among many others, of course, asking for updates on track meets, praising my radio shows, and forwarding applications to Coro summer programs. Noni had a few stern talking tos with Papa to try to help him understand that this was my own process and I had to navigate it and decide where I wanted to apply and enroll on my own. And I know Franz Williams, who's flown all the way from Wesleyan to be with us today, can attest to this as well. Papa, of course, couldn't suppress his enthusiasm for Wes, no matter how hard he tried, and wanted to share it all with me. I've compiled a series of some of the best emails I received from Papa during my application process. I'll note, the emails about Wes have gone back years, Papa was playing the long game. But these are a few of the ones I received beginning from the day before I learned I was accepted to West to the day after I committed. March 26th, 2021. Subject, Wesleyan. Tomorrow noonish. Break a leg. Go Teva. Go Wes. Shabbat Shalom. Love you. Papa. April 6th, 2021. Subject, you. I'm truly sorry about Brown and Yale. You deserve to be admitted everywhere, but it's just tough out there. The good news is that you have many outstanding choices, and now you can visit the campuses. Just know that Wesleyan would love to have you and your friends if it's the right place. Love you, Papa. My personal favorite, sent before I went to tour schools with my dad. Subject, Wes. Sent at 3:08 a.m. so that Noni wouldn't see. On April 11th, 2021. I know I'm not supposed to talk to you about Wesleyan, but if you decide to fly back, please let me know when. I promise not to have the band meet you at the airport. I just want someone to meet you. I'm gonna take my glasses off. And a follow-up email sent at 3:10 a.m. read, I love you, because he couldn't let me forget. April 13th, 2021. Subject, you. Have a wonderful trip. Enjoy Wesleyan. Love you, Papa. And April 14th, a day later. Sorry about the rain forecast. Can't control the weather. XO. April 20th, 2021. Subject, you. It's 1 a.m. and I can't sleep. We all just want you to be happy with your choice. That said, where are you? Love you, Papa. April 27th, 2021. Subject, Wes. My last plug for Wesleyan over Berkeley is simple. 4,000 versus 40,000 students. A robust Jewish community with your namesake, your own radio show starting freshman year, cross-country/track, social justice work / making a difference in Georgia. Wesleyan has a huge advantage. Where Berkeley shines is its graduate schools. You can get your master's and your doctorate and have the best of all worlds. If it's Tufts, I can't make a case. Tufts has it all plus Boston. Your call, love you, Papa. May 2nd, 2021. Subject, your Wesleyan surprise. Was one of the highlights of my life. I'm so happy that you're so happy. Love you so much, Papa. I've only been at West for 2 months, and I've already been able to discover the wonder that Papa so clearly wanted me to experience. From the moment I arrived on campus this year, I immediately felt like I was in the right place. I'll admit, the Corwin Stadium sign right in the middle of campus is a bit daunting as I try to forge my own path at Papa's beloved school. Yet over the past couple of weeks in particular, I've begun to appreciate the inseparable connection between Papa and Wes. Clearly, Wesleyan made an undefinable influence on Papa. Not everyone receives weekly emails from their college's football coach with game scores, and Papa made a consequent influence on so many others. Papa's role within the Wesleyan community is a shining example of how every place and every person that crossed his path was shaped for the better, and his radical love and loyalty towards all the communities he was a part of is inspiring to all. On Thursday night, right before flying home, I went to the first training meeting to join the Westview radio station. I hadn't been able to talk to Papa much about my time at Wes over the past couple of months, but I so wish I could tell him everything and compare my experiences to his own. There's no doubt in my mind he'd be thrilled to hear about all the new adventures I'm embarking on in the place which he loved so much. Yet to have grown up with a grandfather whose deep love and pride for me and for his whole family was so evident, it was a privilege in itself. To know how proud he was of me, no matter what path I chose to take or whatever path I will choose to take in my future, is a gift whose power I will never be able to describe. Go Cards. I love you, Papa, and I will miss you so much. Hi, I'm Dorrit. I'm David's oldest daughter. Growing up in Los Angeles is a tricky proposition, one that many of my college peers can't fully wrap their minds around. Being born into this juggernaut of a family made it not only a manageable experience, but also one filled with immense pride and deep-rooted connection to my city, thanks to the plethora of ways in which my grandfather worked tirelessly to change the lives of so many people and communities here. Growing up in Los Angeles meant not that I want to be famous one day, but rather that I aspire to be as universally loved and widely respected as my grandfather was. He was a local celebrity of epic proportion, solely due to the size of his heart. I was incredibly fortunate to not only grow up alongside my grandfather, affectionately known as Papa, but also to share a long list of passions and characteristics with him. From World Series Dodger games and countless movie screenings, most of which he immediately declared the best picture of the year, to Mauna Kea beach walks and banana splits, there was never a dull moment spent with him. But the moments I treasure most are the little ones that pass by sometimes without as much as a whisper. I can't put into words how significant of a silver lining it was for me to live on Sierra for a couple of months last year. Sitting down to dinner most nights, just my grandparents and me, quickly became the highlight of my days. Some dinners would last for hours. There was nothing I loved more than watching my grandparents try to tell a story together. Without fail, Noni would gingerly cut Papa off mid-sentence with, "Bruce, that is not how that went at all." Papa and I connected on many levels, but most of all through our shared love of storytelling. I would never have committed to and acted on my dream to become a writer, absent his encouragement to keep telling stories, and also if not for the stories he told me. My senior year of high school culminated in a 30-page thesis I wrote about relationships, using the script of When Harry Met Sally as one of its main primary sources. As part of my conclusion, I conducted an interview with my grandparents in the mockumentary style Rob Reiner used for the meet-cutes that are interspersed throughout the film. This one speaks for itself. Papa: "Our friends Jerry and Marilyn took us out on a double date. I thought we had a good time, but Noni told our friends never to do that to us again. It went okay, I didn't think it went bad, so why didn't I call you again?" Noni: "Bruce, it was horrible." Papa: "I thought the ride home was interesting. We were talking about the stock market." Noni: "We were? This was 6 years ago. I was working at a stock brokerage firm. We would go out 3, 4, or 5 times, and then he would disappear." Papa: "I would write these letters to Noni. 'Sorry for the long famine' was my famous line." Noni: "He liked me, but he liked someone else more. I believe he even proposed to her. She said no." Papa: "I asked Joanne to marry me. She told me she was dating a couple other guys and that she would have to get back to me." When Papa turned 80 in June 2020, we wanted to do something special, despite being amidst the first wave of the pandemic and unable to celebrate with his whole village in person. I volunteered to spearhead the 80th birthday video, figuring that a handful of Papa's friends would send in 10-second videos that I'd spliced together. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. My inbox quickly became flooded with emails, many from people I had never heard of before, but who clearly had been very touched by my grandfather's presence in their lives. Suddenly, the little birthday video was over an hour long, and when we sent out the Zoom invite to play it live for everyone, I remember my Uncle Danny being doubtful that many people my grandparents' age would even know how to log on to the call. But, like clockwork, I stared into hundreds of rectangles of people dancing around their living rooms to celebrate Papa's milestone birthday. I don't know why I was shocked. For his 80th, I also surprised him with an article I wrote in the Jewish Journal about his legacy. I know that he was touched by this literal manifestation of L'Dor Vador, his signature catchphrase meaning from generation to generation, one that will never falter and one that I will live to fulfill for the rest of my life. In the spirit of L'Adore Vador, I began interviewing Papa last year when I was living with him. We'd spend the afternoon chatting about his early childhood years, what he and Bonnie were like in school, how their family functioned, and what they did for fun. When my mom called me a couple weeks ago and we had a feeling that he was nearing the end, I broke down thinking about how I will never finish these interviews, how I only got as far as his young professional years, how there was so much more to discuss and uncover. But the more I thought about it, I realized that even if Papa had lived to be 100 and I interviewed him every time I came home, I would never hear every story because there are just too many to recall and never enough time. While it's a daunting task to look out at all of you and attempt not to cry, it's also incredibly reassuring and beautiful to be able to visualize Papa's fan base, as my mom calls it. The good news is that every single one of you holds precious memories of my grandfather that will help me fill in the gaps. And that, to me, is the greatest gift I could ask for right now. Navigating my first 2 decades with Papa by my side was an immense privilege that more than made up for the fact that I've only ever had one grandfather. My mom's dad passed away before I was born, but I've witnessed her do an incredible job of preserving Jimbo's memory and passing down stories that led him to become a peaceful apparition in my life, a spirit within reach, yet just out of my grasp, who in many ways I feel like I did know well. I hope to emulate her storytelling ability so that everyone who knows me can feel Papa's ubiquitously altruistic presence in their lives, even without him physically being here. When others urged me to play it safe and take more practical or pragmatic routes, Papa's hopelessly romantic, relentlessly optimistic spirit encouraged me to dream big. You want Brown? Then tell Brown that, and tell them with your whole heart. So I did, and here I am 3 years later, absolutely tethered to and enthralled by a school that I wasn't sure I deserved when I was 17, but Papa always knew I did. He and my dad used to tell me during my softball days to leave it all on the field, and that's exactly what he did. No path uncharted, no dessert untasted. He rose to the occasion and wholeheartedly embraced every single day he had on this earth. At his core, and sometimes to his detriment, he was a yes person. He picked up every phone call, donated to every worthy cause, much to Noni's frustration, joined every board that extended an invitation, helped every person he encountered who was in any kind of need, and always showed up to every single game, performance, and milestone for his children and grandchildren with a mile-wide smile. I hope to have a heart half as big as Papa's and to say yes even half as much of the time. I know I will always feel his energy, especially in all the special spaces he inhabited. In this sanctuary, his sanctuary and ours, at the Discovery Cube, in the first row of Poly Pavilion, in the stands of La Cienega Park, in the booths of Nate and Al's, the list goes on. And that's precisely why I will never leave Los Angeles for too long. My roots here are too deep to be severed. I hope to grow mine as big and strong as his were into a seedling of his giving tree, while integrating his infectious spirit and fierce determination into everything I do. Hollywood lost a star, but heaven gained an angel. I will love you forever, Papa. L'Adore Vador.
Dave, we're in trouble. I thought it was going to be hard to follow Padilla and Gruel, but here we are. Because the grandkids doing their thing. I just want to, before I start, I just want to take a moment. I'm so grateful, obviously, for the family that we have, and it extends in beautiful ways. And I just want to first recognize my dad's twin sister, Bonnie, who spoke this morning at Graveside about her woo-mate. And Bonnie, all the Fullers and the Pomerances and the Friedmans, you guys are a deep, incredible part of our lives. So when I was a kid, I used to play a game with my dad. I would push one of his toes forward towards him, and then I would pull another one back towards me. He would then guess which way I was moving it. Then there was that UCLA-USC game, Dave, I don't know if you remember, at the Rose Bowl. And for whatever reason, we couldn't park in the lot next to the entrance gates. It must have been before my brother was driving, because we all know he would have driven over cones, sped around parking security to make sure my dad got as close as possible to the gates. We ended up walking about a mile to our seats and back, and my dad spent the next 2 weeks in bed. When I think back to my childhood, there were very few moments like these that I remember where my dad talked openly about having multiple sclerosis. The burning, the pins and needles, the numbness in his lower extremities is what he lived with every single day, since his first symptoms developed on his honeymoon in 1968. He never complained or felt sorry for himself, and to the contrary, he shared that his MS was actually a gift, actually a blessing. Maybe this is why his heart was so big. His body was compensating for what his legs couldn't do. Or maybe that optimism and enthusiasm that was his hallmark and that we all know him for was just something he was born with. As a child, if you're lucky, you view your parents like superheroes. And then when you become an adult, or if you're lucky enough to become a parent yourself, you begin to view them slightly differently. You see their strengths and their flaws from a different lens. In my case, the understanding and respect for my dad only grew. And to be honest, blows me away to this day. I knew I hit the jackpot if the biggest issue I had with my dad was that he put too much butter and sour cream on his baked potato. His enthusiasm, as we all know, carried through all aspects of his life and all the people he came across. But for my dad and his two sons, baseball was our passion, and in many ways, the thread that strung our lives together. This journey started at Dodger Stadium, where his favorite day of the year was always Old Timers Day. He loved to see the old guys on the field and share stories about Roy Campanella, Gil Hodges, Pee Wee Reese, Koufax, Drysdale, and his favorite player, Tommy Davis. Most of you know my favorite player growing up was the Garv, Steve Garvey. And when the Dodgers didn't sign Garvey in 1982, I was inconsolable. My dad reached out to Dodgers owner Peter O'Malley, who was a friend, and he asked Peter to call me and explain why the Dodgers didn't re-sign Garvey and let him go to the Padres. Peter, if you're watching at home, I'm sorry I didn't take your call. I was 10 years old, and I was pretty pissed. So what did my dad do a few years later? He bought the Padres. It was a small, tiny ownership portion, but that hasn't helped the team either. As you've heard before, our baseball journey continued from Chavez Ravine to the Palm Springs Angels, to Butte, Montana, to Casper, Wyoming, and ultimately to Cooperstown, for the trip of a lifetime with Frankie and Mikey and Sherm and Jerry and Alan and my brother and Stephen. My dad was also my baseball coach, more of a cheerleader than a tactician. He always made sure we had a good time, but our team was never good. I will always remember one game when I was pitching and the bases were loaded and I was on the verge of tears, and he came out to the mound. He gathered the infielders in a tight huddle and he leaned in and he said, "Hey guys, do you know how to sell a duck to someone who's hard of hearing?" We looked at each other like this guy was insane. And then he leaned in further and said, "Want to buy a duck?" I think I gave up a grand slam on the next pitch. As Dorrit just shared, if you ever want to know what it was like to be my dad, there's something really easy you can do. Just say yes to everything. It wouldn't be unusual for him to start the day right here on the bima at Temple Emanuel for a B'nai Mitzvah, then to run over to see one of his grandson's baseball games, then schlep with Dave to Santa Anita, and then probably hit a political fundraiser on the way back. Mom, hopefully there was time for Craig's at the end of the night. This common flurry of activity was only possible because of my mom. Somewhat reluctantly, she always agreed to the plan. She was the motor behind the little engine that could. My mom has the smarts, strength, attention to detail to join the ranks of Nancy Pelosi or Martha Stewart, and she used those special gifts to allow my dad to soar. My brother also played an essential role in pushing that little engine up the hill. He joined MTC to help my dad steer the movie exhibition business, often through challenging waters over the past 25 years. And in Dave's greatest act of devotion, he donated his kidney to my dad almost 7 years ago to the day. Because of that life-changing gift, my dad had the opportunity to attend his grandkids' B'nai Mitzvot, to joyfully celebrate his wedding anniversary in grand fashion with my mom, and as you heard in detail today, to see one of his grandkids go to Wesleyan. Those damn Padres didn't deliver on their end of the bargain, but Dave's kidney can only do so much. So as we've heard today, my dad was fortunate to know and interact with some true greats. President Clinton, Mayor Bradley, Peter O'Malley. But when I think of my dad, my heart immediately goes to the lesser-known interactions that for me paint the full portrait of his life and his true essence. Singing Kookaroo with Leonardo, who's cleaned his office for 35 years. Visiting his best friend, Frankie, and tossing that ball back and forth at the end of Frank's days. Cracking an imaginary egg on my cousin Tina's head every time he would see her when she was little. And pushing his toes back and forth in the early stages of my life and also in the final stages of his. We are all so lucky to have shared our life with this gentle soul. I will forever be grateful to call him my dad.
So I had a couple disclosures to start with, the first of which was how I learned early on that Corwins and Coopers cry at just about anything. Certainly movies, sports, politics, commercials. But my family is much stronger than I, so please forgive me. The other is that we were given strict, all speakers, 3-minute limits for today. And as Danny knows, every high holidays, Dad would throw out a number, and we'd go over or under on the rabbi's sermon. So it was usually over, but their words are much more profound than any of ours, especially mine. So if there's still time, bet the over right now on this speech. So. My dad loved nothing more than a line down the block and a packed house. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today, whether in person or online, and for the many wonderful thoughts and memories you've shared over the past few days. And thank you to the many people who helped my dad live his best life. June, who cared for him the last several months with great strength and tenderness. Tammy, who gently pushed him with physical therapy the last many years. His many doctors who looked after his MS, his kidney, his heart and his mind, and managed to balance this long list of medications. His beloved rabbis who comforted and inspired him. Jill and Morrow and everyone at the office who looked after him. And to his twin Bonnie, his roommate who shared a bond with my dad like no other. And of course to my mom, whose strength, patience, and protection gave my dad the best possible life. As you've heard, Dad was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis the year they were married 53 years ago. The unpredictable nature of MS made it hard to prepare for what might come each day and how much he could do. As if MS weren't enough of a challenge, then came heart stents, kidney cancer, and kidney failure. Dad knew how lucky he was to have a partner, and he lavished her with flowers and gifts on every birthday and anniversary and many days in between. Thank you, Mom, for taking care of this extraordinary man who meant so much to so many. A quote I think resonates about my dad is from one of his heroes, John Wooden, who said, "Things turn out best for the people who make the best of the way things turn out." Dad could easily have let his health challenges guide the way he approached life, but he was instead thankful for all he did have and dedicated his life to helping others. A friend of my dad's and mine, Andy Howard, beautifully summed up the thoughts I couldn't articulate. He told me I could paraphrase, as I've been struggling with my thoughts. Dad was an inspiration and mentor to many. He never left a conversation hanging, never left a message unanswered, never complained or shunned away from challenges. He was truly brave, genuine, and sincere, and while many were fortunate to call him a confidant and friend, Danny and I were the lucky ones who called him Dad. Dad and I had a great working relationship. We were a good balance of altruism and practicality. He only worked with my amazing grandfather for close to 15 years, but it had a profound impact on us. Cheryl was a pioneer who brought Nat King Cole, Sammy Davis Jr., and Shirley Temple, among others, to the Orpheum Theater. He was an industry giant who did as much for good causes as he did for our company and for exhibition. Although my dad made his mark by creating a coalition of theater exhibitors and distributors to build and service the first movie theater in Watts after the 1965 riots, and adapted products shown in our downtown Los Angeles theaters as the demographics changed, with great success, my grandfather was clearly in charge. Consequently, my dad took a different approach with me. As I learned the business, he thrust me to the front often and gave me the freedom to make decisions, all the while stressing the importance of the metropolitan family and how we entreat our employees and business partners. To him, this meant handwritten birthday cards to theater managers, and as I would discover, continuing to pay for health insurance for retired employees or their widows, and on and on. He would do anything possible to make someone smile and their life better. We approached business very differently. He cared greatly about the success of the company, but cared equally about how the company could be used as a platform to help others. This led to many compromises. I was skeptical of a lot of his ideas, but if he believed strongly in them, he'd call Kara, with whom he would conspire to help me see his wisdom. My dad and Kara shared a love of human interest stories and often discussed Steve Lopez's column, including one about a high school basketball player whose mom had MS. The son grew up fast, having to take care of many basic household needs, which included being at the laundromat until 1 a.m. My dad called Steve Lopez the day after this article ran and arranged to buy a washer and dryer for their apartment. It was remarkable how much he was able to pack into a day. Visitors to his office included B'nai Mitzvah mentees who he helped with their speeches. There were, of course, hundreds of Wesleyan interviews, postgraduate career planning talks, and brainstorming sessions to kickstart or sustain nonprofits. He would try to get help on the spot, scrolling through his large Rolodexes or asking Jill to get someone on the phone who could help give someone or some cause the guidance or break they needed. And of course, anyone who visited got a narrated tour of his office, highlighting description of old theater pictures, family photos, dozens of baseballs signed by politicians and Hall of Famers, his Wesleyan football helmet signed by alum Bill Belichick, UCLA basketball signed by John Wooden, winner circle photos, and Singletary's Breeders' Cup trophy. One of the most memorable encounters I witnessed was when I went into his office one time. I thought he wasn't there, and found him sitting next to a woman I didn't know with an orange and a needle. I quickly excused myself, And he later told me that she had MS, and he was showing her how to inject herself with MS medication, which he did daily by helping her put the needle into the orange. He always had a way of calming one's fears and would go a long way to do so. Dad, of course, had politicians visit too. I shouldn't have been surprised, but when I checked his voicemail every couple of weeks over the last 20 months, there would be close to 50 messages, 45 or so of them from candidates looking for support. No exaggeration. From Alaska to West Virginia, Democrats found him because they knew he could help, put them on the map, and of course he would write a check. He had a giving problem, and he knew it. Mom tried to limit his giving, but he always found a way, and he'd meet with just about any candidate. He excitedly called me into his office one day to meet a congresswoman from Sherrill, Iowa. I didn't know that he knew much about her platform, but she was a Democrat from a town spelled the same as his dad's name in the state where his dad was born, and that was enough. Beau Biden stopped by months before he passed away. I had the pleasure of being able to be in that small meeting. The visit prompted one of the most impactful notes my dad received from now President Biden that aligned with my dad's life mission to help others. President Biden's note read, "Bruce, my dad used to say, 'Do me a favor, I appreciate it. Do my son a favor, I never forget it. Bruce, you're a genuine friend, and we love you. Keep the faith, Joe,' Beau's dad." As you've heard, baseball was a constant through line in our life. We were both very involved and passionate Little League coaches and board members even before we had kids. But we had very different approaches. While I would always angle to try and get the best players, that wasn't a top priority for Dad. He didn't think twice when he passed on taking the far and away best player in the draft my last year of Little League, to select a player who was somewhat of a lost soul, who he had befriended at the park and thought he needed a mentor. The best player my dad passed on taking not only had a great Little League career, but went on to play in the major leagues. But my dad defined success differently, so this never bothered him. There are dozens of stories of good times with the Palm Springs Angels, a single A team purchased with more than 100 partners. He insisted that everyone have a business card that said owner. He loved throwing free bags of peanuts to fans and leading cheers at games. He would send telegrams with inspirational messages to the manager when the team was struggling on the road. These were not well received. And then there was his brief minority ownership experience with the Padres. When Roseanne Barr sang her infamous rendition of the national anthem, it was the first time we were ever there in the owner's box. That was quite a day. There are also countless memories of baseball odysseys to Cooperstown, Butte, and Casper, and a spontaneous red-eye flight to New York to see a Wesleyan football game in Game 1 of the Yankees-Mets World Series. I could go on, but have to finish with one last story many of you know. My dad was far more spiritual than I and believed in fate. We had long-standing plans to go to the racetrack in Del Mar 10 days after my grandmother, Dorothy, passed away. The morning we left for Del Mar, I looked in the paper. I'd usually be a lot more prepared, but we were obviously mourning and not in a great place. And I saw that a horse named Remember Dorothy was running that day. Most people might make a sentimental bet on the horse. My dad wanted to buy her. Fortuitously or not, the horse was running in a claiming race, so she actually could be purchased. I knew he was nuts, but also knew he wasn't going to take no for an answer, given his grief and his passion. So we managed to get funds into an account at the track to enable us to make a claim. Dorothy finished third, and there were 5 claims on her. When there are multiple claims, they assign you a number on a die, shake the dice, and pull one out. Of course, our number was pulled, and Remember Dorothy was ours. We immediately went to the barn where my dad cozied up to her and called her Mom, as he would do every time he saw her. Dorothy went on to win a few races and was ultimately claimed from us. This would be a nice story with a profitable venture if it were the end of the tale. But my dad insisted on getting Dorothy back. We lost 2 sheikhs on claims up north, and the last owner shipped her to New Jersey. Dad couldn't accept this, made a deal to buy Dorothy, and shipped her back to California to begin her breeding career. Further defined the odds, Dorothy's first foal, Bruce's Dream, won his first race and multiple stakes races. Dorothy's second foal, Dee Dee's Legacy, also won his first race. Subsequent foals, Lador Vador, and Mobama, were much less successful. Remember, Dorothy mercifully passed away, bringing the bleeding breeding operation to a halt. After providing one of the more remarkable stories of Dad's passion, commitment, and belief in butchering. And last, I don't do this often, and Danny touched on it, but I want to talk about our kidney. As those who know me, I'm very analytical, and gathering information about donating a kidney was quite overwhelming. In the end, there were no guarantees except knowing that I could do something to provide a better quality of life for my dad, and that was enough. How often do you have the opportunity to do something for someone who spent their life doing anything possible to improve the quality of life for others, especially me and my family? Amazingly, Dad used my kidney for exactly 7 years. And just for the record, it was still going strong at the end. And as Danny highlighted, he shared so much with us all during that time. While he'll always have a part of me, what I want most is for us to always keep a part of him. It's not enough to be thankful for all the things he did. We need to be like Bruce and be proactive about helping others, connecting people with one another, and doing small things that can have a large impact. Please help continue his legacy. Dad was so loved and the best role model anyone could have.
We've heard so many beautiful words and stories. Before we move on to El Malei Rachamim, our memorial prayer, if we could just take a moment, just to sit quietly, think about the stories we heard and what's in our hearts right now, and then we'll come back together. Just one moment. In just a moment, we're going to rise together and hear the memorial prayer. and we'll hear Bruce's name. Bruce and Tony were the first people that Michelle and I met when we came off the airplane in 1996. Immediately, the Corwin family became a part of our family. But that's a story I think every one of us could tell, because all of you, this And now it's up to us to help hold up your broken hearts along with our own, and live our lives together without Bruce's physical presence among us. But anytime I've described Bruce, seriously, over the last 15, 20 years, I've used this one line from Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 1. And I did not truly understand it until I met Bruce. A good name is better than fragrant oil. Now, Rashi said that the reason why a good name is better than fragrant oil is because even precious oil runs down. As it's written in the Bible, as the precious oil on the head runs down upon the beard. But a good name, it rises to the top, as it is stated in the song we sang earlier, and I will make your name great. Precious oil is temporary, but a fine reputation, that's forever. Precious oil, at best, flows from the flask to the palace and no further. But a good name and a fine reputation spreads throughout the world. I know that Bruce has entered eternity, but so has his name. May his name endure forever. Now, the second part of that verse is a little bit startling. It says, a good name is better than fragrant oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. How could that possibly be? Because on the day of our birth, we have only potential. And it's through our lives and through our actions and through our words and through the connections that we make with each other that creates an enduring legacy. That's why all of us are here today. We've spent this day, and there will be many, many more days, talking about those actions and those words and those journeys that made the name Bruce Corwin such a unique and powerful and uplifting and loving person. And his name that we will hear in this prayer, with compassion from the divine, we'll hear it, and we will escort Bruce Corwin into the eternal sea of his spirit, of his life, and of his love. Please rise for El Malay Rachamim, the memorial prayer. You have it on the sheets that were on your chairs.
El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamramin Hamse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfecha Shechina B'malot Kedoshim Utorim Kezoharakia Mazhirin Et Nishmat Baruch ben Shelva Dorothy Shalach Leolamo Bal Harachamim Yasirehu Beseter Knafav Leolamim Veyitzror Bitzror Chaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Ve'anuach Beshalom Al Mishkavo Venomar Amen.
We read together in the English on the bottom of the page. O compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant complete rest in your sheltering presence to Bruce, son of Cheryl and Dorothy, who has entered eternity, sovereign of motherly love, sheltered by your divine wings. May he be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. Amen. You may be seated.
You may not know this, but at one point or another, Bruce and Tony have belonged to most of the Reformed congregations in this country. And while that might not be exactly true, it is true, as Rabbi Geller mentioned, that Bruce loved rabbis. He loved clergy. He loved learning. He loved being a Jew. And he got both in his relationships with rabbis. Rabbis, cantors, educators. He loved to mentor us and inspire us and help us to be the best that we can be. Just like the stories that we heard so many of you tell today. So, to recite Kaddish with the family, I'd like to call any and all clergy who are in this room right now to please come up onto the bima so that we can acknowledge the truth of this moment in all of our lives and to praise the Creator who has given us the opportunity to live life together and to live the blessings that Bruce gave us. So if you please come up now and we will read Kaddish Yatom together. please rise? Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon u'b'chayei t'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agalau v'zvan kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach leolam u'lolmei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, v'imru, amen. May the one who causes peace on high allow peace to come and rest in this room and in all of our hearts. And we say, amen. You may be seated. Thank you all. Thank you. We're going to end, it may be shocking, but words that Bruce loved. Thank you. L'ador vador. Now, he would say these words standing right where I am whenever he would present the gift from the congregation, which was usually a Kiddush cup and a certificate. Yeah, wait, let's have all grandchildren up here. Exactly. But every time he would do it, he would add something like a baseball or a basketball, one time actually a hockey stick, and he would have the clergy sign it as if the bar mitzvah kid even cared that the rabbi signed their hockey stick. But there was always some surprise when Bruce would come and give that gift to our B'nai Mitzvah students. And he would always say, L'ador vador. We used to actually giggle every time Bruce would say L'ador vador, because he said it all the time. But today these words really do sit significantly in our hearts, because it is up to us and them to carry on L'ador vador from generation to generation. So we're going to sing actually two versions of this song. One melody that he absolutely loved, and then another melody that will help us leave with smiles on our faces. Thank you for that introduction, Elizabeth. But I also want to mention that after we're done, we'd like the family to leave the room first, and they'll be outside if people would like to say hello, as opposed to kind of coming into the front of this room. So please give the family the opportunity to leave this space first, and then you may follow. Baruch atem b'voachem. You were blessed as you came into this house. Baruch atem b'tzeitchem. May you be blessed as you go out.